Women Podcast with your host, Tina Conroy. Gain clarity, confidence, and trust in your inner wisdom. Explore spiritual topics, including intuition, healing, wellness, yoga, vibrant living, and more.
Hey guys, welcome to the Intuitive Women Podcast. I am so grateful to be here with all of you today. This is my very first show with a guest, and I'm taking a big breath, inhaling, exhaling, and I would love all of you to do that with me as well. We're going to center today, as we center each and every show, to ground our energy and to connect. Connect to the spirituality, our intuition, and to ourselves. So go ahead and close your eyes. Take a nice, long, slow, deep breath in and exhale away. Now on that exhale, allow yourself to let something go. Let something go physically, emotionally, or something that's not serving you today. And I'm calling upon blessings for everyone listening on the show as we connect to our deeper self for wisdom, clarity, and to connect to our intuition. And then slowly come on back to the room and open your eyes. I'm going to pull a card for our show, and I'm pulling from the Oracle cards. My first card and the card for the show is New Life. It is a gorgeous card. It is a beautiful woman that is arising up and reaching her arm up for new life. And I feel like it is a new life and new day as I birth this podcast and trying all new beginnings. So it is so befitting for me to have my very special guest on the show. I consider her my podcast sister, friend, mentor, a businesswoman, all around entrepreneur, helper. And I want to tell you a little bit about Katie Krimitsos. Katie Krimitsos is the founder of Biz Women Rock, a community and education provider for business women around the globe who want to grow their companies. She is a business coach and growth strategist and provides virtual and live education to help purpose-driven and action-taking women the tools they need to fulfill their business dreams. Her podcast, Biz Women Rock, provides personal business interviews, pertinent topics, and actionable information that help her community thrive in their businesses. She is a lover of travel, animals. She has 2 pet parrots, the water, and is amazingly in love with her very first child, Sedona, and her husband, Chris. And Katie, I am so glad that you are here. How are you, girl?
I'm so glad to be here. I am so honored to be a part of this inaugural show. This is awesome.
I'm so excited. I'm a little nervous, I have to tell you, as my mentor, because I cannot believe you're on my show. So I'm taking a big breath. So
well,
awesome.
I am honored to be here. I think I think I'm just about as giddy as you are. I've listened to your show. This might be your first show of this next phase of your new life, of your podcast and your business. But you've been doing this for as long as I have, girl. You've had your show for about 3 years now. So, you kind of know your stuff.
Thank you. You know what? I guess so. But what happens is when you make this change and you transition, you try something new, everything feels new. And you're constantly asking yourself, what am I doing? And doubting yourself. And today I had that moment where I was really stressed out and what could go wrong. And then I said, if I don't do it, I'll never know. And I've learned that a lot from you and a lot of your community. So we just have to go for it, right?
So true. This whole game of life is a giant experiment. So what do you have to gain by not doing it? You just got to go try.
Absolutely. So I want to start back. We're talking about intuition in business, and we've talked a lot, and you talk a lot to your community about business, but I want to kind of delve in and really get deep about a little bit of spirituality. So I'm going to take the listeners back to when you were a child and your family, your upbringing, religion, perhaps, and how you were brought up.
Yeah. So I was brought up as one of 6 kids out in a very, very small town in Arizona, right on the border north of Mexico. And we were raised very Catholic. And by very Catholic, I mean that we were going to church every single Sunday, celebrating every single holy day, every single holiday. And religion was just really a part of our entire culture. It was really important and really special. I remember my first communion. I remember my confirmation. And those were really special things. Our kind of family, we only had my grandma and grandpa who were out there, but everyone else, like all my aunts and uncles and my cousins, all of them were still back in the Chicago area where my parents were from originally. So we sort of cultivated our own little community of, chosen family, if you will, in my hometown. And so it was very much integrated with our church. And so that was very much a part of like who our friends were growing up. But looking back, I am not a religious person anymore, but I look back on kind of the Catholic upbringing that I had, and it was really important. I started getting really involved. I was a leader in the Catholic Church all the way up through into college. Always part of the leadership team. I was always like doing readings in church, always part of youth camps or whatever it was. And so I really, my parents were really involved as leaders in the church. So I just feel like it was so awesome to have that sort of background experience to sort of, I don't know, just have something in common with the family, something to talk about. And it was a really good backdrop for how we were raised.
And so when did you kind of like move away from the more religious into more of the spiritual? You say you consider yourself more spiritual.
Yeah, so I have definitely evolved into a very deeply spiritual being. And I really think that college was sort of the first time when I started questioning things. And my college days were I kind of title them as my angry feminist days, because those were the days that I just started asking a lot of questions, which I think that age time period, whether it's college or no matter where you are, you're sort of out of the house at 18 to 22-year-old age, I started questioning a lot. I'm like, well, why do I do this? And why do I do that? And so I was very, very involved in the college's Catholic Church, very involved as a leader. And it was awesome. But I found that the more I got involved as a leader and somebody who was just responsible for doing a lot of the things to like community build and like do events for people, the less spiritually connected I felt, which was ironic, right? Because I was so busy doing the things in order to kind of make the events of the church happen that I didn't feel spiritually connected. And I did a lot of things to try. I would be part of like extra prayer groups and, go to church on extra times or what have you. But then I started questioning things. I started questioning, well, how come women aren't priests? And what really happens here? And how come we don't do this? And thankfully, I had priests there. I had two priests in particular there who were really advanced. I mean, like just really open. And so they would tell me, well, hey, the church was very man-made. And unfortunately, it's sort of behind the times on, kind of the deeper freedom of us all being sort of spiritually connected. And so they would just say these are sort of man-made rules and we're just really trying to evolve into something that's more in line with who we are as people. So they were really good about saying that. Very open-minded. Like we had a really active like gay community within the Catholic Church, which you would think that was not welcome, but my Catholic Church, we did. So, but the point being is that I just never felt satisfied with those answers. And so I started sort of backing away. And then once I moved out to Florida, I came out here to do my master's degree. And I just started, I guess I used that time. I didn't know a single soul out here when I moved out here. So I was sort of forced to build a new community. And I wanted a spiritual connection. I just didn't know what that meant. And so I would go and practice basically at a bunch of different churches. Mm-hmm. I would go to the Unitarian church and I kind of liked that, but I wasn't really finding a community there. I would go to Buddhist meditation classes all the time, and I love the Buddhist centers out here, and so I would just do like different meditation programs that they had on a weekly basis, and I would study religions. I really was like active in learning all sorts of other things outside of the scope of Catholicism, which I was raised in, and so what kind of happened is what my mother now calls my buffet style religion. Which is really, I started learning things and I would be like, oh, that's a really cool concept in Islam. And I like that. Or, I like that Buddhist God and I like what that stands for. And that's really cool. And so I would take little pieces of what I really liked and I would let that feed me. And I kind of started getting in this practice of relinquishing myself from that needing to be anything. It didn't need to be boxed in anywhere. And so I really started my journey as a spiritual person And I mean, everything, it was like, I'm sure I studied some witchcraft at some point, and Wicca, and, Native American type of rituals and oneness with nature. I mean, everything. I've always been very curious about like a larger universal something. And I was really lucky because even though my parents are still very, very religious, they're very open-minded as well. And so I remember going to my father when I first started, asking all these questions in college, and I would say, Dad, what do you really believe in? Because my dad is a scientist, like he has a scientist brain. So like I would watch him about the Big Bang Theory. And then I would ask him about like, well, how can you believe in that and believe in God, and believe in Adam and Eve? And I still remember this. He was like, I feel, Katie, like as many religions as there are in the world, there's still something bigger beyond us all. And so the religion that you choose is just where you choose to live. It's where you feel comfortable and how you choose to live your life. But there's something greater than all of that. And I guess he may not even remember that he ever said that to me, but that stuck with me. So for me, that was so much freedom for me to go find my own buffet style religion, my own sense of spirituality or sense of connectivity to this greater thing. And I didn't need that to be inside of a church somewhere. So, and I think along the way, I just kept on attracting more and more people who were of that belief system, conversations that I could have that would enlighten me. And I would see those things as really spiritual interactions. And then all of a sudden, once your mind opens up to that, all of a sudden, everything is incredibly spiritually connected. So I think that the depth of my spirituality has just grown and grown and grown and been very, very, now I'm 38 years old now. I feel so incredibly in tune with this larger universal thing. And I just know that it's going to continue to get deeper and deeper.
It's similar. I'm listening to you, and at the same thing, I went to, Catholic school, and I was brought up Catholic. And when I started doing yoga, practicing yoga, and then teaching yoga, it was a big thing, because at that time, yoga was, I don't know, now everyone does it, but I had a lot of people that would question, am I Hindu or am I Buddhist or what am I? And I'd be like, no, I'm Catholic. And I would still to this day, if someone asked me, I would probably say I'm Catholic. However, I don't go to church. I don't believe in a lot of the things the church, believes in. And I cherry pick what I like, different things. It's interesting because now my kids are out of high school and they're into college, and I kind of sent them on that same path. I sent them to Catholic school, although we were very open-minded, right? And so as I was kind of growing into my spirit, out of my spiritual closet, I remember one time actually, which is funny now, I was sort of doing this, opening up my spirituality and obviously, doing the things that you're not supposed to do in Catholicism. And my daughter came home one day, I think she was in like 7th grade, and she said, you're praying to a false god, because she was learning that in religion. I'm like, oh, okay,
boy.
We got to have this conversation. I created an altar. So I have this small altar with all different things that I have Jesus, I have a Buddha, I have oracle cards, I have, incense, I have whatever. And she said, well, you have an altar and you're praying to a false god. And I had a really great conversation with her. And I said, God lives within us and God lives around us. And I explained this whole thing and she got it. I think there was just like a little bit of, wait, school is telling me this and you're telling me that. And now I can honestly say, having a 23 and 19-year-old, they really are extremely spiritual beings. They do believe in a God, whatever that is for them, but they know they don't have to go to an institution. And, it's really interesting because how your family life plays out. My brother got married. My brother is gay and got married 3 years ago. And here we were all in the wedding party and how beautiful it was. And I'm thinking, how sad it is that the church doesn't recognize that. So we really have all just adopted this beautiful openness, and we've come a long way. I mean, as my family, we've come a long way, but yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing that, because it's interesting. I love what your dad said, though, because that makes so much sense.
Yeah, and I feel like I really almost feel like we're kind of at a day and age where we're sort of in this stage of transcendence where there's so many people who it's not even a matter of like questioning traditional religion. It's just a matter of understanding that it doesn't live within the walls. And even though